and welcome to Who Are You, the Bobcats you know, the stories you don't. I'm your host, Joel Vanner, inside the podcast studio at Quinnipiac University's School of Communications, and I'm here today with my guest, Elizabeth Pratt. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here. I'm not sure if you've seen an episode of our program before, but I asked my guest the same first question, and that is, we know your name, but tell me, who are you?
So my name is Elizabeth. I am currently in my first year master's program at the North Haven campus. I'm getting my master's in social work. I graduated from Quinnipiac back in 2022 and then decided ultimately to come back all these years later for another degree. I graduated with a double major in criminal justice and psychology, went and lived in the real world, quote unquote, for 2 years, and then decided to come back.
Come back for your master's in social work, yes, which we'll unpack all of that later. But Elizabeth, let's go back in time, way back past your undergraduate experience, and tell me, what were you passionate and interested about? Who was Elizabeth back then?
So I think back in high school, I remember being surrounded by everyone who was like, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a teacher, I want to go be an accountant. And I remember thinking, I have absolutely no idea what I want to do, but I knew that I liked connecting with people and I liked being able to listen to other people's stories and not only provide any assistance that I could, but also to try to find commonalities between myself and others or between people that I knew who didn't know each other.
So you must have been the friend group like confidant with that in that aspect, right?
I guess to some extent, but I do think that when I was going into applying for colleges, I didn't apply for anything in particular. Quinnipiac, I remember doing the tour and I really liked the campus and I really felt like the size of the school was a good fit for me, but I did come in undeclared, which I remember my parents were like, what are you doing? Like, you don't know? And I was like, I have literally no idea what I want to do and what I want to commit to.
It's a big time in life, right?
Yeah.
At the age you are to determine what you want to study for the next 4 years, although it can change. You came in undeclared. Tell me about that experience. So you picked Quinnipiac. You were looking at colleges not for the programs, but just for the fit environmentally, and you came in undeclared. What was that experience like?
I remember getting, in every class, it's what's your name, what's your major, and I remember people being kind of like, oh, like you're undeclared, like what does that mean? You don't have a major? I said no, like I don't. I took classes that I was interested in that aligned with my interests, so sociology, criminal justice, and then I took obviously the core curriculum that we have to take here for undergraduate. But I really remember enjoying my sociology class, Sociology 101, and I also really enjoyed Criminal Justice 101, Intro to Criminal Justice. So I was very hesitant to commit even then after first semester because what if you change your mind? What if you decide that you don't want to do this? What if you want to add something? And I had, prior to going into undergrad, I had completed a summer program at a small liberal arts college in New York, gotten my Psych 101 credit there, and it was transferable to any university, I think, in New England, or as long as the standards were the same. So I ultimately decided on criminal justice as my first major, and then after some consideration, I said, I'll add on psychology. They kind of go hand in hand. I figured that it would open more doors for me when I graduated for job opportunities. So, yeah.
So going through that transition, taking those 101 level courses, kind of finding out what you're interested in, what kind of support did you have here at Quinnipiac to guide you in that way of declaring those two areas as your majors here?
I think that what was really nice, in my opinion, was the size of the classes. I know for intro classes, they're typically larger than your more concentrated electives as you go through the program. But I felt like the faculty at Quinnipiac really offered a lot of opportunities for students to get to know their professors, but also utilize the resources that the professors have here, and getting connected with other professors and other faculty and community opportunities for people. Everyone knows somebody. So
sure.
I felt like they really, encouraged guest speakers to come in, for us to utilize guest speakers, learning commons, any kind of TAs that were available. So I felt it was a very supportive experience.
So when you finally decided on criminal justice and psychology, what were some of the support systems that you used in your studies, internships, et cetera, to help guide you through that transition?
I really connected with my youth crime professor, Dr. Alan Bruce. He's one of the criminal justice professors here in the undergrad program.
Who's also been on the podcast.
Yes, he
Give
has.
his episode a listen.
Yes, he referred me. He sent me your guys' information. But in my second year, he had guest speakers come in from the Juvenile Review Board who were looking for some volunteers for panelists. And so I didn't see anyone else take the paper, and I said, I'm interested in seeing what this is about. And I needed a reference for it. And I remember going to his office hours, and I kind of was asking him more questions about, do you know exactly what the schedule would be or what they do, or have you had students in the past do this volunteer opportunity? It wasn't an internship, it was a volunteer opportunity on Saturday mornings. And he said, no, you'd be the first, I'm pretty sure. And so I said, can I use you as a reference? And he was like, of course you can use me as a reference. And that ended up being my first, I guess, boots on the ground experience as a volunteer. It was very low stakes, but I did really enjoy meeting with those individuals and families in New Haven. And I was able to bring that experience back into the classroom for youth crime. And that ultimately did spark my interest in working with children and families.
What were some of the next steps in those programs for internships? What was your experience like now having committed and moving forward with those? What changed for you?
I think, well, when I was in undergrad, my sophomore year was when the pandemic hit. So internships.
So everything changed for you.
Everything paused. Like, we went home for spring break and then we literally never came back. And that was a really crazy time because no one knew what was going to happen. Professors didn't know what they were going to do for classes. If we were, no one knew what Zoom was yet or Microsoft Teams really. But they had paused the internship application process because I think in sophomore year or so your second year, you take your class where you are learning how to apply for an internship and how to make a resume and write a cover letter. And they said pause because we don't know who's even taking interns, who's not taking interns.
And that's stressful because it's a required part of your program, right, to have an internship.
Yes. So I think everyone was in full panic mode at that point. But we made do, and some people had virtual internships. I did not have a virtual internship. I waited until my final year in undergraduate to complete my internship.
Where was your internship?
It was at a female transitional home in New Haven. So it was really great experience. I think it was our first year partnering with that agency at the time. So there were definitely some growing pains, but I think that it really did give me a chance to apply everything that I had been learning in the classroom, both in person and online, to that setting.
So then after graduating, you said you experienced life and did life. Tell me about the life that you had after graduation for a bit. After
graduation, I had started working full-time. My first job post-grad, it was at a nonprofit in Waterbury, Connecticut. I was an employment specialist for individuals who have disabilities, so helping them find employment and then helping them maintain their employment, whether it was full-time or part-time. And I lived at home. I think that there's a little bit of stigma around living at home post-grad, but I mean, you save money.
Absolutely.
And I think there's no shame in it. I think that no one really also addresses in undergrad how much imposter syndrome you have leaving campus and leaving, school life behind.
And it's you and a million other students applying for jobs at the same time, having the same timeline in that way. It's definitely very stressful.
Very stressful. And you kind of get out there and you're like, am I qualified for this?
Right.
Am I ready for this?
Am I in the right place? Right.
Yeah. Am I doing what is, am I going to be the person that, professors hoped I would be, that my peers thought I would be? And then after that, I kind of was very resentful of Connecticut. I think it was mostly just because I've lived in Connecticut my entire life. I grew up here, went to college here, wouldn't trade it for the world, but I was in the mindset of I kind of want to go and do something for myself while I'm young and, I can. And if I don't like it, I can always, switch it up and come back. So I did move out to the Seattle area for about...
Pick the other coast.
Yes.
You said, let me go as far as I can without leaving the country over
Yeah,
there.
exactly. Pretty far away. And it was a great experience. I just think that it gave me such a new outlook on where I came from and, all my experiences here. And yeah, it was a transformative experience, but I did ultimately decide to come back.
And we were talking before the show, you went to a couple of Seattle Kraken games, so you
did.
kind of learned the Pacific Northwest culture. Maybe you even went to the first Starbucks or to the Pike Place Market, which are all the touristy things. You probably got it done in the first week you were there. But let's shift to, you came back to Connecticut, and now you're in the Masters of Social Work program. What encouraged you to go back to school, and then what encouraged you to come back here to Quinnipiac in the social work program?
Yeah, I think that I had a bit of a bumpy path, I want to say, leaving the Seattle area. I really tried to give it my all and seeing if it would be somewhere that I would settle down long term, but I just couldn't picture it. And so I remember I called my parents and I said, I want to come home. I just want to come home. And that was really hard too, being away from family. So I figured it out. I ended up leaving my job there. I was working in juvenile probation court over there, which again was a really great opportunity to apply everything that I had learned at Quinnipiac to the real world and in a different area too, with a very different group of people in the Pacific Northwest. But I wanted to come back to Connecticut because it was familiar, and I felt like for those couple years that I was there, everything was so new, and it was, always a process to relearn how to, or learn the environment, or learn the people.
A bit overwhelming while you're trying to start your career too.
Yes.
In that sense.
Yeah. But I did ultimately decide to come back to Quinnipiac because I had such a great experience in undergrad, and I took a look at the social work curriculum, decided that I did want to get my MSW so that I could get my LMSW and then my LCSW later on.
So our Masters of Social Work program, abbreviated MSW.
Yes.
Tell us about the program, what the structure is like, and then what you're doing now in your first year in the program.
Mm-hmm. So the structure is, I'm an on-grad student. We do have an online program as well.
Which is relatively new, the online offering of
is.
MSW.
And I do know that they're hiring more faculty for the online program because the program itself, the whole social work program, is growing very rapidly.
The faculty is amazing to work with. Yeah.
Yes, I cannot say enough good things about the faculty in the social work program over at North Haven. So the classroom size, I would say, is pretty small. I think we have about, I guess I'm still in the larger courses because they're not necessarily electives yet. We're still on a core curriculum. I want to say about 20 to 25 students per class. And then we also have some 3+2 kids, 3+2 students, or 4+1 students as well. They're in their undergraduate, but they are taking graduate level classes at the same time as their undergrad.
So it's a good mix there.
Yeah, it's a really good mix. But what's unique about, I think, the faculty is that a lot of them are part-time faculty or they're full-time faculty, but they're part-time social workers in the community. So they are able to bring stories, they're able to bring their own experiences and perspectives into the classroom. So when we're learning about certain modalities of interventions or therapies, or we're talking about different lenses to look at a client interaction through, they're able to bring their own unique experiences, but also give us feedback on, if we say an answer, maybe critiquing in a constructive manner, the language that we use and how we go about just looking at the situation from that person-environment perspective, which is what they really emphasize throughout the entire program, is looking at each situation as person and environment.
I like that you said that the faculty are experienced in their fields too, outside of the classroom or in addition to their work in the classroom, because that's something that you would find in many different departments and programs here at Quinnipiac, that you have those faculty that are out practicing what they're coming back and teaching you.
Exactly. And I think that they bring such great stories too. So if we're learning about something in particular, certain, setting that you can be a social worker in, or certain modalities that are popular in a certain setting of social work, they're able to bring some kind of story in and of their personal experience, and that to us is what sticks with us when because it's a real world application of what we're learning about. And so I think that those experiences and being able to share, and then also we are all in our first year internships. You have to do your generalist year internship and then your specialized year internship. So we do have our dedicated internship class where we meet and everyone kind of shares what's going on in their internship. But we also talk about all of our internships in each class as well. So we can all bring in different stories or ask questions about how to use or utilize certain modalities, interventions, or ask for feedback from both peers and faculty about a way to look at a situation or to handle a situation.
What's been your experience like in the program so far?
So it is a clinical focused program. So each, you have your intro classes, your intro graduate level classes, and then I'm in my second semester of my first year now. They refer to it as your generalist year. Next year's your specialized year. You take a policy course, you kind of take practice groups or practice courses, and you learn about different modalities of interventions and therapies. It's a lot of reading. There is a research component as well in the curriculum. And we do have every semester we have live actors come in. They're called standardized patients, and it is part of your grade. You are graded on, I think it starts off as a participation grade, but as it goes on, it's on your ability while you're in that area. They have live actors come in to therapy rooms because we are in the School of Health Sciences, so we do have access to those resources. And they come in and they'll present an issue or they need to be connected to a resource, and your job is to, I think you have 10 to 20 minutes to connect them and kind of implement everything that you've been learning in the classroom into a live session.
It's a very real-world simulated experience with the standardized patients. They really stick to their script and profile that they're given, and it's great that you have that experience before you go out into the real world outside of Quinnipiac and have other clinical experiences too.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, I know I've worked with clients before, but for people who are either coming right from undergrad into a graduate program or who are new to social work, it's a really great experience because, you can read about it and you can do case studies all you want, but being able to sit in front of a person and read body language and understand dialect is really important.
And then debrief with your faculty afterwards and learn all you need to. So 2 questions for advice from you. First question is, what advice would you give others who maybe are looking to come into college undeclared and maybe their families are having the same confusion question and they're just not quite sure if they're ready to decide on what they want to study? What advice would you give them looking back on how you found your areas here at Quinnipiac? I
think that when you're 18 years old, when you're applying for undergrad, I think that it is a very difficult time because you're trying to, you're trying on all these different hats, but you're also seeing other people commit to something. And I know that the pressure that you can feel from that. And I think that I would say to someone who is unsure of, it's going to be okay, you're going to figure it out. You're allowed to try, and it's not the right fit. You can pull a 180, I would know. And you don't have to commit to something. And I think that also utilize your resources on campus, utilize those professors, your peers, those community resources to help you find your path because you don't need to do it alone.
Sure. Everyone here is just so accessible to, from your faculty up to the dean's office too. In many schools, you can schedule a meeting with the dean just to talk about your career interests, and they can, like you said earlier, connect you in different ways that maybe not in that room there. My second question for advice from you is, what would you say to those who maybe are looking to go back to school for a master's of social work or other master's program after having some life experience? How would you suggest they handle that transition and kind of think through that process?
I think going back to the imposter syndrome aspect that you feel when you graduate and go into the working world, into your first full-time job, but then also addressing I had the same exact feelings when I went back into school. I was like, am I too old to be here? Like, is this the right path for me? As you know, education is, you pay for it. So, is this the right move financially for me as well? But I do think that it's one of those things where it is okay to start over. And you don't have to, if you try it out and it's not for you, it's going to work itself out. I think that trusting yourself and your ability to figure it out is really important, and also to, again, lean on your resources, not just at the school, but your personal resources, your friends, your family.
Your community here at Quinnipiac, too.
Yeah.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining me on the show and sharing your insights. It was great to meet you today.
Thank you, you as well.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and share, and find other episodes on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube podcasts. Until next time, when I ask my next guest, who are you? I'm Joel Vanner. Bye for now.